The market smelled of oil, sweat, and metal. Jalen walked slowly through the rows of cages. He had seen many strange things in his travels, but today, something pulled him here, toward the back, where the lights were dim and the laughter was cruel. A group of aliens stood around a small cage. They were pointing, laughing, spitting. Inside the cage was a girl. She was small, too small for her species. Her skin was pale silver with blue marks, her arms thin like sticks. She had bruises on her neck, and her clothes were torn. "She's useless," one alien said. "Can't work, can't breed, just a mistake." Another threw a piece of old bread into the cage. The girl didn't move. She didn't even blink. Her big glowing eyes just stared ahead, empty and quiet. Jalen stopped walking. He looked into the cage. The girl turned her head, just slightly. Their eyes met, and in that moment Jalen forgot everything else. She was just a child, maybe 9 or 10 in her years. But the pain in her eyes, it was ancient. She didn't cry, she didn't speak, but something in her said, "I've already given up." "How much for her?" Jalen asked. The seller blinked, confused. "What? Her? She's trash, human. You want a pet? Pick something clean, something strong." Jalen didn't smile. "I asked how much." The alien laughed loudly. "You're serious? Fine. Give me 10 credits. Take the thing before it dies in the cage." Jalen pulled out a 100 credit chip and dropped it in the seller's hand. The crowd went silent. "Why so much?" someone whispered. But Jalen didn't answer. He knelt down and unlocked the cage. The girl flinched as the door creaked open. She pressed herself against the back wall, afraid. Jalen didn't reach for her. He just placed a soft blanket on the ground and waited. After a long minute, she crawled forward, shaking. When she reached the blanket, she touched it with her fingers. Tipo. And slowly, carefully, she wrapped it around herself like it was the only warmth left in the galaxy. Jalen stood and held out his hand. The girl looked at it, unsure. Then, without a word, she took it, her tiny fingers barely wrapped around one of his. He walked through the crowd with her beside him. The laughter was gone. Some stared, some whispered, but no one dared to stop them. Outside, the sun was setting over the station dome, lights flickered on, and ships roared in the distance. The girl walked close to Jalen, her bare feet quiet on the cold floor. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "No one gave me one," she said softly. "They just called me It." Jalen's heart tightened. He looked down at her and said, "Then from now on, you're someone, and no one's taking you away again." The girl looked up at him, her eyes wide. She didn't smile, not yet, but for the first time a tiny light came into her gaze, like a small flame in the darkness. He led her toward his ship, not knowing that saving her would change everything. For her, for him, and maybe for the whole galaxy. Jalen's ship was small, old, and quiet, but it was clean, warm, and safe. He had never brought anyone back here before. Now, as the engines cooled, he sat on the floor across from the tiny alien girl. She sat on the edge of the bed, her legs pulled close to her chest. The blanket was still wrapped tightly around her. Her glowing eyes looked at everything. Walls, buttons, lights. But not him. He placed a tray of food between them. Bread, soup, and a little fruit from his own supply. The smell filled the room, but the girl didn't move. Jalen pushed the tray closer. "It's safe," he said. "You can eat." She didn't even look at it. She just shook her head once. Slowly. Jalen didn't push. He had seen kids before. Runaways, survivors, but never someone this quiet, this empty. "Are you not hungry?" he asked. "I don't eat stolen food," she whispered. He blinked, surprised. "It's not stolen, it's yours." She looked at him now, confused. "No one gives food without wanting something," she said. Her voice was soft, but the pain in it was sharp like broken glass. Jalen sighed and leaned back against the wall. "I don't want anything," he said gently. "Just eat, little one." Still, she didn't touch it. Instead, she slid off the bed and curled up in the corner of the room, like she had done it 1,000 times before. Like that was where she belonged. Jalen didn't understand. He watched as she lay down on the floor, not asking for a pillow, not asking for anything. She just folded into herself, like a shadow trying to disappear. Later, he found her in the dark storage room. She had opened the hatch and crawled inside, hiding between crates. Her breathing was slow and shallow. She wasn't sleeping, just waiting for something bad to happen. He sat outside the hatch and spoke gently. "You don't have to hide here. This place isn't a cage." She didn't answer. He asked, "Why are you hiding?" Her voice came back like a ghost. "This is where I used to sleep. In the back." Behind the kitchen. If I stayed quiet, they forgot I was there. Jalen closed his eyes, trying not to let the anger rise in his chest. What kind of people could treat a child like that? You're not there anymore, he said. You're here. I don't know what this place is, she said. It's called home, he replied. At least, it can be. The silence stretched between them. He stood up and left a soft light near the hatch, just in case she got scared of the dark. That night he didn't sleep well. He kept checking the monitors, making sure she was still safe, still breathing. At one point he found her sitting at the table, just staring at the bowl of soup. She hadn't eaten it, but she hadn't thrown it away either. It was a start. Jalen leaned in the doorway and said, "One bite, just one." She turned slowly and asked, "If I eat, will you throw me away when I'm not useful anymore?" The question punched the air from his chest. He walked over, knelt beside her. "No," he said firmly. "Even if you never do a single thing, you still matter." The girl blinked fast, and for the first time, Jalen saw something he hadn't before. Tears, real, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. She picked up the spoon, hands shaking, and took one small bite. It was just soup, but to her, it was the first taste of something much bigger. Safety. Days passed slowly inside the ship. The girl was still quiet, but she started sitting at the table instead of the floor. She still flinched at loud sounds and never took off the blanket. But she followed Jalen now, silently, wherever he went. He never asked her for her name again. He waited, hoping she'd one day tell him on her own. One afternoon, Jalen took her with him to the outer market. It was quieter here, less crowded. He needed supplies, food, parts for the engine. The girl stayed close, holding the edge of his coat like a lifeline. Everything seemed normal, until Jalen felt it, that strange feeling like eyes crawling across his back. He turned quickly, scanning the crowd. Nothing. But then he saw it, a tall figure in a dark gray cloak standing perfectly still near a spice stall, face hidden under a hood, but Jalen could feel the stare, cold, sharp, watching only them. He gently nudged the girl toward the ship's path. "Stay close, and don't look back," he said softly. As they moved, the figure moved too, slowly, carefully, blending into the shadows. Jalen changed direction twice. Still, the figure followed. By the time they reached the ship, Jalen turned suddenly and drew his weapon, but the figure was already gone, vanished between the stalls like smoke. Inside the ship, Jalen locked the doors, checked the cameras. The girl sat on the floor, her eyes wide with fear. He knelt in front of her. "Do you know who that was?" She didn't answer at first, but then she nodded, just once. "Yes," she whispered. "He wears that color. The ones who owned me before." Jalen's jaw tightened. "What do they want with you now?" The girl pulled the blanket tighter around her body. Her voice trembled. "They said I was broken, useless, but I have something they still want." "What is it?" he asked gently but firmly. She looked down at her chest, then she moved the blat. Ink it aside just a little. Under her collarbone was a faint mark, like a tattoo, but glowing. A soft red symbol, pulsing with light like a heartbeat. Jalen stared. "What does that mean?" "I don't know," she said. "They called me cursed, then sacred, then dangerous, I think. I wasn't supposed to live." Jalen stood up and paced the room. This wasn't just about rescuing a child anymore. This girl, who had no name, no value to anyone, was somehow part of something bigger, something powerful. "We have to get answers," he said aloud. The girl asked quietly, "Will they come again?" He turned and met her eyes. "Yes," he said, "but this time, I'll be ready." That night, while she slept curled beside a warm light, Jalen checked the security logs. A camera had caught the cloaked figure at the edge of the docks. He zoomed in on the footage. The figure had looked up at the camera at the last second, and for one moment the hood slipped just enough. Eyes, not human, red and glowing, with a mark on the forehead that matched the girl's. Jalen sat back, heart pounding. Whoever that was, they knew exactly who she was, and now, they knew where she was too. Outside the window, stars blinked in the distance, but Jalen's ship felt smaller than ever. And danger was no longer just a memory, it was coming back. Jalen sat by his small workbench that evening, a dim lamp casting light on his hands as they moved carefully with a knife and a block of wood. The station outside hummed with its usual noise, but inside the little home was quiet. He had decided to make something, not out of need, but out of hope. The girl sat in her usual place against the wall, knees pulled to her chest, her glowing eyes watching him without a word. She never asked questions, never demanded anything, but Jalen wanted to see if he could give her something that would belong only to her. The block of wood slowly took shape, his knife cutting away little by little. Shavings fell onto the floor, piling like soft curls. An hour passed, then another, until the shape was clear. It was a small bird, its wings stretched as if ready to fly. The carving was not perfect, but it carried care. Every cut was made with patience, every curve shaped with thought. When he finished, Jalen walked toward the girl slowly. He crouched so that he was not towering over her. She watched him with guarded eyes, the kind of eyes that expected cruelty more than kindness. Jalen held out the wooden bird and said gently, "It's for you." For a moment she did not move, her thin body stiff with fear. Her hands trembled, hesitating, but finally she reached. Her small fingers touched the bird, then wrapped around it tightly. Her lips parted slightly, as if words almost came, but nothing left her mouth. She only stared at the toy in disbelief, holding it close as though it might vanish. Later that night, when Jalen was cleaning the workbench, he heard a sound that froze him in place. It was small, fragile, almost hidden, but it was laughter. He turned and there she was, sitting cross-legged on the floor, clutching the bird to her chest. Her face was still pale, her body still thin, but her lips curved in a smile. She laughed once, just ints, and the sound was enough to fill the room with warmth. Jalen's chest tightened and his eyes stung with emotion. That single laugh was more valuable than anything he had bought, more precious than any treasure. In that moment, he knew he would protect her, no matter what it cost. The next morning, Jalen woke to find something new on the table beside his bed. It was a flower, uneven and rough, made from scraps of cloth and string, but it had been shaped carefully, every piece twisted together by small hands. The girl stood nearby, clutching her bird, her glowing eyes lowered. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice so soft it was like a breath. Jalen smiled, picking up the flower carefully, as if it were made of glass. "It's beautiful," he said warmly, and her eyes lifted in surprise. She had given something back, something made with her own effort. Jalen's heart swelled, and he spoke words that felt natural and true. "You're family now," he said, his voice steady. The girl froze, staring at him with wide eyes. Her lips trembled, and tears suddenly filled her cheeks. She tried to hide her face, ashamed of crying, but Jalen reached out, resting a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It's all right," he whispered. "You don't have to hide anymore." She shook as she cried, her body releasing years of pain in soft sobs. Yet even as she cried, she did not let go of the toy bird in her hands. She held it like proof that she was no longer worthless, no longer unseen. For a brief moment, the home felt warm and safe, but outside, danger was moving. Jalen heard the low rumble of engines through the station walls. He rose and stepped to the window, his eyes narrowing. In the black sky, huge warships glided closer, their hulls painted with a dark crest. A circle of fire and iron, the mark of the Order of Purity. Jalen's breath hardened in his chest. The Order was feared across worlds, known for cleansing, hunting, erasing all who carried impure blood, and now they had found this station and they had come here for her. Inside, the girl clutched the wooden bird tighter, her glowy. The next 2 days passed in a strange silence. Jalen kept the ship hidden in Dock 9, a quiet corner of the station that few used. The girl stayed inside, barely speaking, but she didn't hide in the storage room anymore. Instead, she started sitting beside Jalen while he worked on the engine. Sometimes she watched him, sometimes she just listened to the humming tools. Jalen pretended not to notice, but he felt her trust growing, slowly, like a tiny plant in dry soil. One morning, she placed a small hand-carved token on his table. It looked like a star with curved wings made from scrap metal. He picked it up and asked, "You made this?" She nodded once. "It's for safety," she whispered, "so the bad ones don't find us." Jalen smiled gently. "Then I'll keep it close." That evening, just as the station lights dimmed for cycle shift, a sound echoed through the ship. A knock. Not an alarm, not a code, just 3 soft, slow knocks on the outer hatch. Jalen froze. The girl dropped her spoon and stared at him. "It's them," she whispered, voice shaking. "They always knock first." Jalen moved quickly, grabbing his old plasma pistol and locking the inner doors. He guided her into the floor hatch beneath the main bench. It was small, barely enough space for her curled-up body. "I'll be right here," he said. "Don't make a sound." She looked up at him, eyes wide. "Don't give me back," she begged. His heart cracked. "Never," he promised, and shut the hatch gently. The knock came again, louder this time. Jalen took a deep breath and opened the outer door halfway. 3 figures stood there, 2 in station security uniforms and 1 in a dark gray cloak, the same cloak as before. "Can I help you?" Jalen asked, forcing calm into his voice. The lead guard spoke. "We've received a report. A missing biological unit, classified alien property, may be inside." Jalen narrowed his eyes. "You mean a child?" "No, sir," the second guard replied. "A failed genetic vessel from Sector 12. Not legally recognized," the cloaked figure added coldly. "Just return her, and there will be no charges." Jalen's fingers tensed on the door control. "She's not here," he said. "You sure?" the cloaked one asked, leaning in. "She's dangerous, human. She was made for a purpose, then rejected for it. She carries something she shouldn't." "I don't care," Jalen said through clenched teeth. "She's not a thing." "Then prove it," the figure challenged. "Let us search your ship." Jalen didn't move. His voice was low, sharp. "You step inside without a warrant and I'll treat it as an attack." For a long moment the hallway was silent. Then the guard stepped back. The cloaked figure tilted his head. "This is not over," he said. "We'll be watching." The door closed with a hiss. Jalen stayed frozen until the footsteps faded. Then he rushed to the hatch and opened it. The girl was curled up, tears in her eyes, but silent. He picked her up gently, holding her close. "You were right," he whispered. "They're coming." She clung to him, whispering back, "They always come when the mark glows." Jalen pulled the blanket around her and looked out the window. He knew now that they couldn't hide here anymore. They had to move, fast. But more than that, he knew one thing for certain, whoever these people were. They weren't afraid of the law, and they wouldn't stop until they had her, and he wouldn't stop until she was safe. Jalen's ship flew through the outer ring of the star system. Engines ran quiet, lights stayed dim. He didn't want to be seen, not by cameras, not by ships, not by them. The girl sat beside him in the co-pilot seat, silent as always, but something had changed. Her skin looked warmer, her eyes glowed stronger, and that strange red mark on her chest, it pulsed slow and steady. Jalen knew he needed answers. He couldn't protect her if he didn't understand who, or what, she really was. So he flew to a place few remembered, a hidden asteroid called Varella's Hollow. An old healer lived there, part scientist, part mystic. She once served in the Genetics Council, but left long ago. When they landed, the girl grabbed his arm. "I don't want them to test me again," she said, voice trembling. Jalen knelt beside her. "She's not like them," he said. "She helps people, not hurts them." They walked into a round cave full of lights and crystals. The healer, an old woman with silver eyes, studied them silently. Her gaze rested on the girl's mark, and she inhaled sharply. "Where did you find her?" she asked Jalen. "She was in a cage," he replied. "Thrown away, starved, hunted." The healer placed 2 fingers near the girl's neck and closed her eyes. Seconds passed, then her own skin lit up with symbols. She opened her eyes and looked shaken. "She's not a mistake," the woman whispered. "She's a carrier." "Carrier of what?" Jalen asked. "The final echo," the healer said. "The last pure trace of a royal bloodline that was erased from history, a line that once ruled this quadrant before the Order took power." The girl stood frozen. "I don't want to rule anything," she said. "I just want to be left alone." The healer nodded gently. "But your blood carries more than memory," she said. "It carries command." Jalen frowned. "Command over what?" "Over ancient tech, over locked doors, over minds built to obey royal lines," the healer said. "That's why they want her." The girl sat down suddenly, overwhelmed. "I didn't ask for this," she said. "I don't even remember who I was." The healer looked at Jalen. "If she activates, they'll feel it, and they'll come harder than before." "Can we hide her?" he asked. The healer shook her head. "No," she said, "but you can help her choose who she wants to be." They left Varella's Hollow with more questions than answers, but now at least they had a direction. Later, as they drifted through deep space, Jalen found the girl sitting alone, drawing in the air with her finger. Her glowing lines formed the same star-shaped symbol she'd given him earlier. "What are you drawing?" he asked. "I don't know," she said. "But when I sleep, I see it, burning in the sky." He sat beside her. "You don't have to be anything they want," he said. "You're not their tool or their secret. You're just you." The girl looked up at him slowly. "Then why did they throw me away?" Jalen didn't have an answer, but he gently placed his hand on her shoulder. Because they were afraid of what you'd become, he said. And I think they should be. Outside, the stars moved quietly, but somewhere far away, the red mark on the girl's chest sent out a faint signal. And in a distant dark hall, a figure in gray opened his eyes. The royal blood had awakened, and now the hunt would begin again. The girl didn't sleep peacefully anymore. Every time she closed her eyes, fire burned behind her eyelids. Not real fire, but a glowing dream of a broken throne, a silver crown melting into ash, and voices shouting her name. But she didn't remember what the name was, only that it was powerful and dangerous. Jalen sat near her bed, watching as she twitched in her sleep. He wanted to wake her, but every time she dreamed like this, her red mark glowed brighter. It scared him, but he didn't show it. He just stayed close, in case she needed him. When morning came, she sat up slowly, her face pale, her voice shaking. I saw it again, she said. The burning palace, the sky full of ships. Do you remember anything else? He asked gently. She nodded. I was standing on steps. They were all kneeling, and I was wearing something heavy, like armor. Jalen raised an eyebrow. Were you afraid? She looked at him and said quietly, No, they were. They flew toward a small mining colony for fuel, but Jalen didn't leave the ship this time. He used remote drones instead. He could feel the tension in the air, like eyes watching them from across the stars, and he wasn't wrong, because deep in a command room far away, a figure stared at a blinking red signal. It's confirmed, the officer said. The bloodline lives. The cloaked leader turned slowly. Prepare the hunter drones, he whispered. She must not survive the awakening. Back on the ship, the girl wandered into the storage bay. She touched a metal panel and it clicked open automatically. No passcode, no tools, just her hand. Inside were old weapons, dusty, locked, forgotten, but when she touched them, they hummed with life. Jalen found her staring at a blade made of light and crystal. It floated slightly when she moved her hand near it. I think I used this before, she said. Jalen stepped closer, cautious. Do you key? Now how? I don't remember, she replied, but my fingers do. That night she didn't hide under a blanket. She stood near the front window staring out at the stars. What if I'm not just a girl, she asked him. What if I'm a weapon? Jalen walked over and stood beside her. Then you get to decide how that weapon is used, he said. You're not their tool anymore. She looked up at him. For a long time I wished I would just disappear, she said, but now I don't want to run anymore. He smiled softly. Then we don't run, he said. We fight. But even as they spoke, small hunter drones were already flying silently through the black space. No lights, no warnings, just silent seekers drawn by ancient blood. The girl closed her eyes. I can feel them, she whispered. They're getting closer. Jalen's hands moved quickly across the control board. He activated the cloaking shield, rechecked the weapon system, and locked down all doors. He looked at her once more. If they come, we won't be alone, not this time. She nodded. I won't hide again. Outside, a red light blinked far in the distance. The enemy was near, but for the first time so was the girl's power, and something inside her was waking up. Not just memory, not just strength, but the fire of who she used to be, and who she might become. The girl sat in the ship's quiet medbay, her legs crossed and eyes closed. She wasn't sleeping, she was listening. She could feel it. Something moving through space, not wind, not sound, but pressure, like a cold wave brushing against her skin. They're almost here, she whispered. Jalen entered the room, holding 2 travel bags. We can leave now, he said. There's an old mining moon 2 systems away, no scanners, no patrols. The girl didn't look up. I don't want to run anymore, she said. He stopped, surprised. They'll kill you if they find you. She opened her eyes slowly. They'll keep finding me again and again, no matter where I go. Jalen put the bags down and knelt in front of her. I promise to protect you, he said. You still can, she answered, but not by hiding me, by standing beside me. He took a deep breath. You've changed, he said quietly. I remember more now, she said. Not just the pain. I remember a garden filled with blue trees and a woman's voice saying, the blood is not a curse, it's a key. Jalen sat beside her thinking, if you stay, we'll need a plan. We don't have to wait, she replied. We can trap them, let them come, and then we decide what happens next. He raised an eyebrow. You sound like a leader. I was meant to be one, she said, until they threw me away. He smiled. Let's make sure they regret that. They moved quickly, setting up defenses in the outer layers of the ship. Jalen wired the doors with pulse traps and set auto turrets near the entrance. He even pulled out a prototype shield booster he had never dared to use before. The girl, meanwhile, did something different. She walked through the ship, placing her small hands on walls, panels, metal floors. Wherever she touched, symbols appeared. Old ones, glowing faint red. The ship responded. Faster engines, sharper weapons, smoother systems, yo. You're waking it up, Jalen said, watching in awe. I think it was built to obey this blood, she said. Not just fly, but protect. That night, they sat together on the deck, staring out into space. No alarms, no shouting, just the quiet before the storm. Do you think they'll understand, she asked softly, that I'm not who I was made to be? Jalen shook his head. They don't care. They only want control. She nodded slowly. Then I'll show them what happens when they lose it. Suddenly the ship lights flickered, sensors beeped softly. Jalen checked the screen. 3 ships approaching, silent engine mode. They're trying not to be seen. The girl stood up, calm. They'll land in 10 minutes, she said. Just like in my dream. He turned to her. We still have time to run. Last chance. She looked at him, eyes glowing faintly red. No more running, she said. I choose to stay. Jalen nodded. Then I stay too. He picked up his weapon, checked the charge. The girl stood beside him, barefoot, small, but unshaken. The air around her seemed heavier now, like a storm building slowly. Outside, the enemy ships began to slow, landing gear lowered, weapons armed. Inside, a child who was once called worthless waited without fear, because this time, she had chosen her place, and she wasn't alone anymore. The ship trembled as the first enemy craft landed nearby. Jalen stood at the door, blaster in hand. Beside him, the small alien girl stood tall, no longer hiding. He looked down at her. You sure about this? He asked. She nodded. If I run now, they'll think I was never real. The ramp outside hissed open. Boots hit the ground, heavy and cold. Figures in gray cloaks and metal armor approached the ship. Their helmets shone under the stars. Red lights blinked on their chests, marking them as part of the order. One of them stepped forward and spoke into a loudspeaker. By decree of the genetic order, we claim what was lost, release the vessel to us, or face consequences. Jalen opened the ship's outer door but didn't step aside. She's not your vessel, he said calmly. She's a child and she's not going anywhere. The leader lowered his hood, revealing sharp features and glowing red eyes. She carries illegal blood. She's a threat to the balance. No, Jalen said. She's a threat to your control. The girl stepped forward. Her voice was steady. You threw me away. You called me broken. Now you want me back. Because you're afraid. The soldier moved closer. You don't belong to him, he said coldly. You belong to the system. Jalen stepped between them. She belongs to no system, he said. She's my family now. The crowd that had gathered outside the docking bay fell silent. More than 20 beings watched. Traders, miners, pilots. None of them knew what was happening, but they all felt it was something big. The order soldier's voice darkened. You have no legal claim over her. Jalen pulled out a data chip and pressed a button. A glowing document appeared in the air. According to Station Law 44C, I adopted her as a citizen under Protection Clause, he said. She's registered, bonded, and mine by choice. Gasps echoed from the crowd. The soldier stared. She's confused. She's not even your species, he growled. Jalen stepped forward, voice like steel. Family isn't decided by species, it's decided by heart. The girl's eyes filled with tears. Not fear this time, but something else. Hope. Suddenly the soldiers raised their weapons. Step aside, the leader warned. This is your last chance. Before Jalen could answer, the ship pulsed with light. The girl's chest mark glowed brighter. The ship's systems responded, humming with old energy. Then, the ground shook. The weapons in the soldiers' hands powered down on their own. Their metal armor grew hot. They dropped their gear, shouting in panic. The girl's voice echoed across the bay. No more cages, she said. No more collars. You called me a vessel, but I'm more than that. I'm alive. The order soldiers froze as their own transport ships shut down behind them. Jalen placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. Let's finish this, he whispered. Security bots rushed in, drawn by the station's alarm. They surrounded the order team. Illegal activity detected, one of the bots said. Attempted abduction in violation of adoption protocols. The soldiers were taken into custody, but the crowd didn't move. They stared at the girl and the human standing beside her. Then someone in the crowd clapped. Then another, until the bay was full of cheers. Jalen looked down at her and smiled. They saw you now, he said. They know who you are. She looked up at him. Because you refused to let me go. He nodded. And I never will. The hangar was quiet now. The order soldiers had been taken away in silence. Jalen stood near the girl as people slowly left, whispering, nodding, remembering what they had seen. She didn't speak for a long time. She just stood in the middle of the deck, eyes closed. The red mark on her chest pulsed softly, no longer glowing with danger, but with something gentler, something alive. Jalen sat on a crate nearby, watching her. He didn't rush her. He had learned she needed time to understand, time to heal. Then she turned to him. I remember it now, she said quietly. My name. His breath caught. He stood up slowly. What is it? He asked. She stepped forward, her small hands clenched, her eyes shining. Liari, she said. My name is Liari. I was born on the moon of Saria. My mother was called High Speaker Aelia. Jalen's heart pounded. He had heard that name once, in an old war report. Aelia of Saria, the last voice of a fallen royal house. They said she died with no heir, but that wasn't true. Her heir had survived, and now stood in front of him. Liari, he said softly, it suits you. She smiled, just a little, not the sad smile she wore before, but something stronger, brighter. They walked through the station together. Everywhere they went, people stopped and looked, not with fear, but with respect. Some even nodded, quietly saying, she's the one who stopped the order. Jalen took her to the registration office. He signed her official documents with pride. She was no longer unknown species or abandoned. She had a name, a guardian, and a voice. But it didn't stop there. A message came from a nearby planet. A council of peaceful worlds wanted to speak to Liari. They had once served under her mother's guidance. And now, hearing the royal line lived on, they wished to offer protection and alliance. Liari sat in the chair, blinking at the message. I'm just a girl, she whispered. They want me to lead? Jalen sat beside her. You don't have to lead today, he said, but they're asking for something more important. Hope. She looked out the ship window, stars blinking in silence. Once they had felt cold and far away, now they felt different. They felt like home. I'll go, she said finally, but only if you stay with me. He smiled. You couldn't get rid of me, even if you tried. They left the station 2 days later, not in silence but with cheers. As Liari stepped onto the ship's ramp, people bowed, not out of fear, but out of respect. She turned once, raised her hand, and waved. Jalen stood behind her, proud and steady. As the ship lifted into the sky, she whispered, I thought I was forgotten, thrown away like trash. Jalen leaned down and said, but now the stars remember your name. She nodded, eyes glowing soft red, not with danger, but with destiny. And so the small girl who no one valued, the child who was mocked, caged, and nearly erased, became a name whispered across systems. Liari, the last flame of a fallen bloodline, the girl who was claimed by a human, and who claimed her future with her own voice.